assistants, all of the above, talk about what they're excited about bringing to campus in the upcoming year.
Can you hear me? Even
We'll keep it available.
Alright, so as many of you know, SCAP is a service organization. We work a lot with social justice and volunteerism, but moving forward, we really want to move on from just being like that volunteer organization. We want to work with other organizations and continue those relationships that are already there to really just facilitate the most that we can from our relationships. So opportunities, overall, I think this is going to work through, opportunities to educate the student body on different issues. We are like the social justice group, that's what we want to promote, and ultimately we do that through educating the student body on different issues. It gives you guys more of the opportunity to be empowered, to speak up, to do something, and that's ultimately one of the things that we're trying to promote. So.
I think also, like Sydney said, I think a lot of what we do, or more what we've known for, not necessarily all of what we do, is the volunteer service that we do off campus, and of course we do a lot of empowerment work in campus, and I think that continuing to combine those two aspects of what SCAP does and really work to make sure that the communities that we're interacting with in the greater San Jose Santa Clara area and the empowerment issues that we're addressing and working with on our campus can really be combined so that we can bring some of our sort of internal empowerment work out and some of our external volunteer service back into campus. So something that the Health and Disabilities Department did this year was they had their first event that really focused on mental health, and I thought that just continuing to work with sort of that, which is a lot of people with disabilities outside of campus, but acknowledging that there are issues that people have with mental health and wellness on campus, and really connecting those two things is something that sitting there really important to me.
hello. First, definitely want to recognize Madeline as well for being an awesome part. Thanks for coming out and hanging out with us today. When we ran, she's my vice president. What ASG is looking to do next year is a 3-quarter campaign about finding our passions, acting on those passions, and then sharing and celebrating the success of our work through that. We talked about a campaign, a lot of different triangles, student groups that we want to work closely with and build communication with are off-campus students, international students, and then some judicially restricted students. And I love this idea that's kind of come out this year about collaboration and increased communication. So obviously working with the CSOs and then some organizations like Locals or International Club, Global Engagement Office, Office of Student Life are some organizations that we really want to continue to build strong relationships with so that we can affect the most positive change. Beyond that, we also want to look at business reform, judicial reform, and education reform, and kind of what that means to individual students. I know that I've had the opportunity to bring a lot more sustainability education into the business school, and looking at restorative justice in some of our housing policies, and then character values and self-development and self-care as a part of our educational institution. Ultimately, we ran on a platform of community, sustainability, and snacks, and we look forward to incorporating those 3 ideas into all the work that we do within the institute.
It's on. So as the Associate Director of the MCC, some of my personal goals this year were, as Sydney touched on earlier, empowerment of not just the leaders within the MCC, but also of students around campus. One of the successful events that we had this year that I really liked was something called Strengthen My Views. That's something where around campus people have their own opinions, their own ideas, their own beliefs. And one thing that I want to do is make sure that people have reasons for having those and strengthen their reasons for having those, or understanding why they have these beliefs and understanding why they should spread those beliefs or maybe those opinions, and really understanding why you think something is right or you think something's wrong. In addition to that, I really want to empower the leaders within the MCC and really give them the tools to become leaders that I know that they can be, and giving them new tools to reach their fullest potential.
Yeah. And just to add to what Tyler was saying, as director of the MCC next year, I think my goals kind of fall into two major categories. One being internal things that I'd like to do within the MCC and for all of its member clubs. So I think one of those is definitely just like us as MCC leaders doing a better job of communicating to our member clubs what exactly it is that we provide for them and why we value them and why we think that they're so important. Because I think that although like so much work gets done, we don't always get to see that, and people aren't always aware of that unless you tell them. So that's super important. Also, just to continue the theme of increased collaboration and making sure that all the clubs within the MCC are supporting each other and being involved in each other's events, because we're in this together and we want everyone to be enjoying it. And then in terms of like kind of external goals, I'd like to see just the MCC continue to educate people about racial issues, and I think that that's something that's really important, and I'd like to see that happen even more. And then also to work with other clubs on campus. So I know we've had some things at ASG, we've done some great things with SCAP, and I really want to keep that going. And then finally, just to make the MCC a more comfortable space for people who aren't minority students. As much as we do value the experiences and the voice of minority students, we don't want that to be at the expense of other students who don't fall into those categories. So that's a big one as well.
I have Lester Deans coming up to talk with us about sort of some difficult dialogue on campus currently, and probably one of the reasons that a lot of you are here tonight is to discuss the recent Yik Yak issues that we've had on our own campus and that have gotten a lot of media coverage. So Lester and I are excited and feel like this is a really important medium for this to go on. It's just important to always remain respectful and keep in mind all of that through this conversation. So.
Before we begin, a couple more ground rules. Actually, I want folks to know that there are some seats in the back over here if you'd like to sit down. I see some folks standing in the room, just want some seats over here. I didn't say there were seats for all y'all.
Oh, wow.
One other thing I wanted to ask, a couple things about ground rules that are important for me. Anytime we're engaging with the community to have a conversation, we have a dialogue with each other. The point of a dialogue is not to debate, not to be right, but to be heard, right? That's the point of a dialogue. I ask you in respect that we do that. I'll also ask in full respect that we challenge each other respectfully with what our opinions are. We want to hear from you. We're not looking for one voice. We want to hear what your opinion is, but do so in a respectful way. The last thing I'll add is it's really important to me that you tell your own story and not respond to someone else's. Tell your own story and not respond to someone else's, right? Use your voice, your words. But I don't want to hear they're wrong about what they said. It's okay with what they have to say. It's not okay for you to tell me that I'm wrong and feel it that way that I feel. But I have to hear you. I have to hear you. So begin that dialogue. We really just wanted to stand up here and say, what's on your mind? Father Yik sent out his letter today. We want to hear from you about Yik Yak. What's on your mind? Raise your hands and speak.
I personally feel like it shows a lot of the microaggressions that happen on this campus. And yeah, I guess there are a couple of jokes on it, but we're waiting for something to I feel like we're waiting for some of these microaggressions to manifest into something terrible. People are saying these things and they believe these things, and then when that person is in the position of power to act out these microaggressions, something might happen, not in just regards to race, but sexual orientation, gender, all that stuff. So I feel like something definitely needs to be addressed in regards to the anonymity and stuff. Thank you for that.
For me, since Yik Yak is anonymous, so if you don't know who's posting there, me personally, if I see something that's know if someone in my class posted, like, I don't know if someone sitting next to me posted, I don't know if someone like smiling on their face posted, and like those are those thoughts that they have. So it's like really hard for me. Like that's why I deleted it personally, because like I'd rather just not be exposed. Like you can't not be exposed to that and just like not go on there and see like terrible things that people say. It's like you have some stuff to talk, but
so about the Yik Yak issue, I did cluster UCB, sent an email to Provost asking him to like have a dialogue because I kind of feel like this isn't an attack on the faculty, but I do feel that student voices can only go so far, and there's like a blockage. And so like even though I want to have that face-to-face interaction, I'm not going to lash out, I'm not going to attack. I just want my voice heard, and yet I still feel that that's not the case. And then on top of that, I specifically requested in the email to not send out an email addressing this issue, especially with the subject line being a joint message to students. There's no sense of urgency. There's no sense of it being anything about racism. And then, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. But the last thing that I think upsets me the most is this dialogue. The fact that our figurehead isn't here. Because like this is about the blemishes that SCU has, the blemishes that we want to fix to improve the school that we already love, the school that we love attending, but we can't even, like us as students, we can't even talk to the figureheads, we can't talk to the people that would probably have the most power to be able to stop such an emotion. I think like what that kind of upsets me most is, it's like, it's a friend. Friend that this happened to, and it's not okay.
Yik Yak is the id of this campus, right? Like Yik Yak is all of the things that people actually think about this campus that they're not willing to say out loud in any comprehensive sense, right? And so when we're sitting here talking about Yik Yak, we're not really talking about Yik Yak. This could happen literally on any format in anything. It could have been somebody yelling out the window. I think it's important that we end up talking about this in the context of Yik Yak because it's such a big national issue. Everybody's talking about Yik Yak right now. But the thing that we have to remember here is this is not about Yik Yak. This is about the fact that SCU is a deeply privileged and deeply sexist and deeply homophobic and deeply racist place. And until we're willing to confront that on a deep institutional level, this is not going to change. We're going to keep seeing stuff like this. And whether that's yaks, whether that's even just people talking outside of any internet discursive form, whether that's racist theme parties being thrown, right? Like these things are going to keep happening until we find a way to confront them on a really serious institutional basis. And I got to give it up to MCC and SCAP and all of the wonderful activists who have been doing a lot of work trying to educate. But part of the problem here is that they're preaching right now to the people who are already interested in the issues because those are the only people who show up to the events. And there's only so much we can do about that now. If we want people who come from privileged backgrounds to understand the feeling of being marginalized and oppressed in such a beautiful place, then we have to force them to do it. And I realize that that's not a pretty thing to talk about, but that's stuff like looking at racial justice training and sexism justice training, like we look at Haven and like we look at Alcohol EDU at the beginning of freshman year. This is something where if we want to actually change the discourse, we have to have mandatory training and mandatory discussion of these things at the beginning of students' experiences at Santa Clara so that they don't come in media res and only encounter these discussions half-baked halfway through their freshman year.
But I agree with everything Tony said, and I would just like to say that I am one of the friends that Lydia was talking about. But I'm like really upset that like you're up there. Like I appreciate everything that you guys are doing, but when you mention like snacks and stuff, it's just like, come on, like you've got all these people here wanting their voice to be heard, and it's just like I refuse to leave this school. I don't want to leave this school and have friends of mine that basically these people here that want to have like, I love them to death. My brother's going to school here, and I don't want him to have to deal with these kind of things. So I can't talk right now, like, obviously, clearly about what my mind is going through, but I do want to have dialogue with you guys, like, whether it's just me and you guys, or, like, I know Lydia and myself and some others, like, we're going to talk to Lester about things, but it's just, like, I really need the urgency of this to come out, because this isn't okay, and I refuse to let future generations have to deal with this. Like, this needs to stop, and whether that means me coming back after graduation to continue to talk to people about this, like, I will be here. These are my babies, so I'm not going to let this go by. Like, this needs to be seriously addressed.
Because I can't say everything at once because I get emotional. But another thing, just like, I don't want to just keep talking about it. I want an action plan set. I want, even if it's the smallest progression, just knowing that there's something set and that it'll hopefully grow each time, each year, each day that it passes. Like, and like, we all know, it's a general consensus that the people that need it here the most are not here. They're not going to be here because it's not a priority to them. And like, we don't want to make it something like mandatory or something like where it's not going to actually directly touch the people. It's going to just go over their head, or it's going to be like, oh, it's another mandatory thing that you have to go to, and make it a joke, because it's not a joke. The thing is, like, it's difficult to see all of this happen and to feel that like you don't have a say. And like even when you have a say, like right now, it's still not going to reach the years that it needs to reach. And that's why I'm like actually asking faculty, I'm asking like not only just the people that we have the most interaction with, like we have a lot of interaction with you, Lester. We have a lot of interaction with like the counselors, the advisors, with the people that have more substantial power as like a figurehead. We never get to meet them. We never get to talk to them. Why can't they have office hours? Why can't we go talk to them? And like, a last thing before I sit down again, why can't we have students and faculty come together to find a solution that is like acceptable to both sides? Because all we see is faculty trying to do things, and it's still not exactly what the students want. And like me personally, with the whole, I said, please don't make it an email, because how many students were going to throw away that email without even reading it, because the title was a joint student meeting. It had nothing about racism. It had nothing about the Yik Yak. It took it out of context, like everything like that. So it's difficult to know like that was the thing that it was talking about. That was the issue that it was talking about. Like, why can't we as students have that conversation with the faculty members to be like, this is an appropriate solution. This is what we think will be helpful. It's hard because we just see faculty do things and we don't think that it's the best fit.
So just a quick question for everyone in the audience. Is there anyone here who's unclear or unsure exactly of which Yik Yaks that are being referred to? Is there anyone who just like is feeling really lost right now? Okay, because I figured there were a couple of people in the room who probably felt that way, so I just wanted to clarify, because I know if you weren't on the receiving end of some of these messages, then the emotion might feel a little bit misguided. So in light of, there's a few different incidents that occurred that have spurred like various Yik Yaks over a period of time, but I think there's some particular Yik Yaks that were yacked, if that's how you want to put it, over the last couple of weeks that have really spurred these incidents, and I just wanted to bring to light what they were. So the MCC and SCAP puts on a border wall, which I'm sure you saw because it was in between Benson and Kenna over the past, I believe, like 2 weeks or so. And something that the MCC and SCAP did was they posted specific yaks in response to the border wall. One of the yaks was, I hate minorities. There was a yak along the lines of, I'm glad that we as Americans can leave Mexicans out of our country. Things along those lines, things that were very, very unambiguously racist. And most recently, an incident that was reported was, so every year, Igwe, which is the Black Student Union, host an event called Black Male Appreciation and Black Female Appreciation. Anyone is welcome to join who's in the club. It's just a way for all the girls to get together and throw a big party for the guys, and all the guys to throw a big party for the girls. It's a lot of fun, and it's a bonding event. And something that we typically do during that event is very similar to what sororities and fraternities do. We think of creative ways to print out events and go and hand them out to people. And most recently, this event took place last week. So the girls who were delivering invitations to the men of this, for this event, were delivering invitations, and we came outside of SWIG, and we were making quite a bit of noise, and it was late at night, which was a little bit disrespectful, but someone took it upon themselves to get on Yik Yak and yak, "Can the monkeys outside SWIG please shut their watermelon eating mouths?" Which I think everyone in this room can agree is pretty inappropriate, and I think it was deeply hurtful to a lot of people who were there for obvious reasons. Those are horrible stereotypes. So I just wanted to clear the air, because I know there's some of you who may not be on the site as much. So just please do understand that these are very specific, pointed insults at particular people. So if you were unclear about that, I just wanted to make sure you knew.
First of all, thank you for clarifying that. I sort of did not think of that at all, probably because I've been just really interested in it. But could I ask your name? Lydia. Lydia. Okay.
How you spoke to?
Hey. I just wanted to sort of preemptively apologize, because I know that it can be pretty frustrating personally for me to sit up here and I can't understand even the extent to which you guys are feeling emotional about this right now, and I personally am absolutely horrified, and I deleted Yik Yak off my phone because I would open it and it would make me cry because of what and I've been also called these horrible things, and I think that it is frustrating to have us sitting up here and we're in these positions where we really want to make a lot of change, and right now we can't promise you what we're going to do. And so I'm apologizing in advance for not being able to say, this is my plan of action for making people stop, because that's not something that we're capable of doing, no matter how much we want to try. And if I could send up a magical Wi-Fi signal that blocked Yik Yak as an app from campus, I would do it right now because I hate it so much, but that's my personal opinion, that's not me as a student leader. And I think that what we want to do with these positions that we create a lot of change is recognize that the anonymity of Yik Yak makes it impossible for us to approach individuals and have them take responsibility for these things that they're saying. And it also forces us to acknowledge that these people are around us on campus, and they might be sitting next to them in class every day, and they might have these feelings about us. And what we really want to do is, with our respective organizations, I think take the unique powers and perspectives that we have and really continue to try to educate and change the culture, because that is what we're going to have to do. And I want to have as many creative ideas as possible for how this is going to happen. That's not going to be mandatory, and that's not going to be preaching to the choir, and that's a really hard balance to find. But I just wanted to say that we are all really passionate about this and care a lot about having the genuine representation of all of these voices within CSOs and RSOs and everywhere else. And so thank you for having these ideas and for presenting them to us. And I'm sorry that right now we can't tell you exactly what we're going to do.
You also had, I don't want everyone to take any pressure from you. It's not expected, I don't think, that you as student leaders solve that problem, right? Right. That's something for the entire campus to be a part of the dialogue. What else?
I'm a freshman, and my experience here is it comes down to apathy and lack of accountability when these events happen. And I think this school is specifically image conscious, and it's disgusting. Administration doesn't really want to get these problems, and it's appalling. And what makes me really upset is I know the race is racial problems are huge on Yik Yak, but it's even gotten past that point. It's everyone's being targeted and things are made as jokes, and it's for their own selfish interests. And we're taught coming in as freshmen that we are a united front, and when you get here, that's not the reality. And so what's really frustrating is when I know you can't ban Yik Yak, and I'm not saying you guys are responsible for doing that, but when the administration, like going off of the email point, doesn't even like directly state that this is a racist problem. It's just like this like facade, and that's disgusting to me. It's like they need just to admit that there's problems, otherwise you can't address the actual problem.
Not only admitting that there's a problem, just admitting the severity of the situation. Like, you can't put in the email how much hurt and pain and how disappointment you feel. I come here trying to get away from where I come from is not really a safe environment, and this is supposed to be a safe place. So when things like this happen, it's like I can't be I feel like I don't feel safe being myself. Like I can't. We're trying to do a good thing, and something like this happens, and all we get is an email. Like I just feel like there's so much more that could be done. I mean, like you don't have to know what you can do, but I know you can do it.
I feel between the students and the figureheads in general. Like I know when the stabbing occurred in the Graham, we weren't even notified really. Like our parents got a notification before we did, and I was really upset because I was like, this is another problem, like mental illness on our campus, and we're also losing that underneath the rug, and nobody knew about it. And again, that's just a vague email. This is again.
Okay, so I feel like this problem, again, obviously, before Yik Yak and Yik Yak finally brought it to light, but I've known since the first I've been here that there's been racism on campus. Even before I came here, like, because I'm from Santa Clara, my friends would be like, oh, do you want to go there? I feel like I made the right choice, so I love it here, but there's a lot of problems that need to be addressed, and from my time here, it hasn't been addressed at all. And I know you guys said you haven't done anything, you can't do too much, but I feel like there should always be meetings to talk about what steps can be taken with these individual people here, because they're obviously really hurt, and these are people I truly care about. And while you can't promise 12 things being mandatory, like making steps to see what their input is, at least then go from there and see what progression you can go from there, and just work with the people that are hurt the most.
I feel like this is really important to remember that like Yik Yak isn't the problem. If everyone was wasn't racist, wasn't sexist, those things wouldn't show up on Yik Yak. So banning Yik Yak isn't going to solve the problem, because then it'll just become another one of those things where like it's never addressed. And the fact is, to a certain extent, like I'm thankful for Yik Yak, because if those things were to react about, like there wouldn't be any physical proof of that existed in this country. And so I think it's important when addressing these problems and going forward that you can't just say, oh, let's ban Yik Yak. No, like how do you address the behavior? And part of that is a certain extent out of your control. Kids come here when they're 18 plus, but to a certain extent you can still educate, you can still help people figure out like this is how you're wrong and this is how we can correct it. But I think like I don't know, just in the comments here, in the comments in the past, and like in other universities and whatnot, the issue isn't Yik Yak, the issue is the people.
Yeah, thank you to everyone for sharing your emotion and sharing the urgency that you feel. One of the things that I am reflecting on for ASG next year is having ASG stand for actively seek good. And for me, it's about not necessarily expecting that everyone feels comfortable coming to us and speaking their problems, which is why it's so, or discomforts, and why it's so inspiring to see you come up here and come to this event and share like how angry and how like wrong this totally is. So definitely when we talk about collaboration, we talk about building more intentional ways to have dialogue and hear these concerns and have ASG come to these groups instead of expecting that people can come to our meetings because they can make the time for this stuff. The other part of that is that actively seeking good, and I thought it was awesome yesterday. I always like to think when it's a huge anonymous problem like this that's hard to control, we got to think about what we can control and what we can positively affect. I thought it was awesome yesterday to hear the MCC and Igwe and all these places get awards at the Bucky Awards. I think that it's really cool to see that our school does take great strides to recognize the work that goes in, and that's something that I totally want to celebrate because I do think that we have that ability. I know and I hear that all it takes is one comment to ruin that feeling. But I want to say that we're really committed to dialogues, to increasing community and conversation on your time, because it's a totally real feeling and it's totally unacceptable to happen on this campus.
One thing I want to add real quick. I just want to acknowledge that there are other faculty, staff, administrators in the room. If there's everything you all want to say, please do add that to the conversation. Your voice is also part of this discussion.
First, I want to apologize because I have to leave at 8:30. But second, I just wanted to say I'm in total agreement with Avery to the extent that, like, we as student leaders can't do everything, and that is unfortunate, and it makes our hearts hurt a lot. But I just wanted to know I'm a super results-oriented person, and I know that there have been some things in the MCC that have been discussed in terms of kind of fighting these issues on campus. One of which has been having a schedule planned for the entire year, like the entire year of all the events we're going to do, like this quarter, like within the next couple of weeks, so that we can present it to teachers and have them incorporate certain things in their syllabus. For example, I'm in an Econ 135 class. It's a women and genders class, but it kind of has more of a statistical tilt to it, so it's something that a lot of business school students have to take. It's not something that necessarily a lot of like ethnic studies people might take, or a lot of women and gender studies people might take, and that could be a class that we could pitch to people to have like a certain event that is related to these issues be brought up. So I was just wondering, among that suggestion and with other suggestions, what would you guys want to see us do? What are things that we can accomplish, like with the people sitting here right now, that you think would help fix the situation?
And just in the spirit of community building, when you stand up and share, could you share your full name? So if you do have a great idea, we can follow up and contact you after the meeting. Thank you.
I know you have to leave, so before we get to, I want to make sure before we get to solutions that folks, if they had anything else they want to say, say it first.
I'm in complete agreement with Deja. I think in my years leading stuff on campus, it's so apparent from our point of view how homophobic some spaces are here on campus, off campus, how racist, how sexist. But I'm with you that without Yik Yak is this horrible thing, and running Immigration Week and putting so much energy into this, and reaching out to communities on campus, we want to engage with this other perspective that we know is out there, but we never get to represent. And then having that space and having my friends be personally attacked for their documentation status, or their race, or the horribly sexist stuff that happens there all the time. It was painful, really painful to see, but it also, I felt like, was the first time that we've had really concrete things that we can go to people and say, this is the issue, this is what we need to attack. I think I led the queer organization on campus 2 years ago, and last year there was a very homophobic event off campus where a student was kicked out of a party, and we knew that this kind of homophobic spaces existed, but we didn't get to take action. We didn't get to present something to the student body that we were going to react to. We didn't get to present something to the university. We didn't get people to see the experience we deal with on a daily basis until we could give them this tragic experience. So I think we need to not ignore Yik Yak. We need to take it as our fire to move forward. We need to use that in our arsenal, and we need to address what these people are saying and put that back in the center. Know how hateful this is and address those things. We know that these people are out there, and we know you're not coming to our space, but we're specifically speaking to you. This is who we're targeting. This is why we're doing our work. This is at the center of all of our actions. And I know Immigration Week next year, we're going to be focusing on exactly these kinds of horribly nativist things that were being said. And I expect that we can use this as power to move forward and specifically attack this horribly misogynistic, racist, and nativist attitudes that we have on campus.
Hi, my name is Amia Nash. I'm a senior and I'm on student government, and so I really appreciate everyone coming out here to share their ideas. From what I've heard, there's been a lot of talk about creating more dialogue, and as a student leader who's been involved in different events in which we try to promote just that open dialogue through the Office of Diversity and those difficult dialogue discussions. The people who go to those things are only the people who are affected or interested in the topics. For example, when you look around the room, the minority representation in this room does not reflect that of the university. And so people who are interested or feel a connection to the topic are going to be who are going to come to those to those discussions. And I feel like what we need to do is like look at the problems, those are a compassion issue and the solidarity issue, which are at the heart of our Jesuit values. And so I feel like because of that, we can find a way to incorporate it into our education, and that's the only way that it's going to reach out to those students who aren't going to openly come to these conversations.
You want to switch and talk about solutions.
A solution that a step that would like move us forward. My name is Corbin, by the way. I think would be like bringing these dialogues to students within like ROCs. So it's like instead of like having the difficult dialogue and the same place like every week, like have it travel like 1 week in Graham and like 1 week in UNB, 1 week in Yosemite. Because a lot of times like people will walk past the room and like walk in and like residential learning communities, especially if you do it like earlier in the year when like a lot of like freshmen, like incoming students, like they don't like they're just trying to find. At least for me, I was trying to like find something to do. It's like, oh, there's people in this room, and you go in and you like have a deep, interesting conversation and dialogue that not only affects you, but like you learn as well. That was things like having them travel.
My name is Casimir. I'm a sophomore. I have 2 ideas for something that we could do in the room, like as student leaders. One, I would think, is to invite that one friend that you have that is probably going to be saying a lot of these things. Like everybody has that one friend who says that ignorant stuff, and those are the people that we need to reach. And it's a lot easier to get people to go to events if I know them. Like if Aaron invites me to something, it's a little bit different than getting a mass email or a Facebook invite. Like if it's a little bit more personal and I have a little bit more of an obligation to go. So bringing your friends and bringing the people that we need to reach and get these messages to these events. As well as the second thing would be engage your clubs and your friends in the perspectives training. So I'm a senior orientation leader, and today I had my orientation leaders go through perspective training about gender. And I know they learned a lot based on the conversation, and it's going to help them be able to converse with the students, the incoming students for next year. And being well-versed on the issues that we are talking about. So I may not know a lot about gender, but if I'm going to go talk about it, I can learn more, and then I can spread that knowledge to somebody else instead of saying more ignorant things that are probably hurtful, even if I don't mean it to be hurtful. Perspectives training. So Perspectives is a group on campus. It's faculty and staff and students. I'm one of the students on it, and you can request them. I'm not sure the link, I could find it, but, and they do different topics like Black Lives Matter, the education and equality system, the RRC does one about gender, sexuality, and spectrum, and there's different types of isms that they go over that teach you how to talk about it and in a safe space and allow you to be vulnerable and ignorant and ask the questions that you need to ask without being judged for saying something that might offend somebody else.
I still think a lot could be done with Greek life on this campus. Getting the presidents of frats and sororities and the board members here, I think, would be a huge step in the right direction. Not accusing Greek life of being apathetic, but they do make up the predominant party culture at the school, and that's the place where a lot of these offensive events take place. So I think engaging that population would be really beneficial.
Okay, so I'm Mackenzie. I have 3 ideas. First and foremost, going off the Greek idea, I've seen educated partier signs, and I think it'd be a really interesting idea to create like a social justice partnership with the Greek fraternities and sororities, where if you like pledge for that, then it like you are held accountable. Your parties will be held accountable. There'll be like a review process before you're allowed to do something like that. Secondly, I'm also going to be in OL this year, and I think it'd be very beneficial since incoming freshmen are like the new future of the school to like be very honest and upfront. Like this is what has happened in the school previously, to show them the concrete evidence on Yik Yak. Be like, this is what you're coming into. Like you have the power to change this. Don't be these people. And then I also think it'd be really smart to close the gap between administration and the students by creating an accountability board, where it's not, because I don't think it's your guys' responsibility as government if you have so much going on, but if you created a separate entity that's specifically focused on having people come towards events or come with evidence like this is what's been happening, here's like
concrete evidence this is what's happening, like go to administration with that and create that dialogue with administration, I think there'd be a lot more accountability on both ends, both student body and administration.
Will you serve on that?
I would gladly serve.
What's your last name?
Bush, B-U-S-H.
My name's Tony. I think I agree with Amia's idea about education. I think it's really important that this is an increasingly important part of the academic culture on campus. This isn't necessarily a suggestion for you guys in particular. It's a suggestion for the administrators in the room and all of us students in order to mobilize this particular change. But one of the biggest problems that we have with the educational culture of looking at this stuff is right now critical perspectives on race, gender, and sexuality aren't really as much a part of the diversity requirement as they were supposed to be when the diversity requirement was created. I can't speak on it systemically, but anecdotally I know a lot of people that have taken their diversity classes, and it's been something like, well, you read writing of people of color without talking about the actual experiences of people of color and how that manifests on Santa Clara's campus. So a lot of these diversity requirement classes are talking about marginalized people's experiences, but they're not connecting it to the experience of marginalized people on our campus and in our communities. And I think that's a really big issue. So one of the things that I propose, and I've told Father Eng about this, I've had conversations with all manner of different people about this, is we should cut the pathway requirement to 3 classes and use that space, use that extra class to change the diversity requirement to an ethnic studies requirement and a gender studies requirement. Because our biggest allies in the fight against all of these systemic prejudices on our campus are the departments who are actually created specifically to analyze these things from an academic perspective. And right now I think we're sending a pretty strong message by the fact that neither of those departments can even have a standalone major right now. So if we're not going to have an institutional focus and an institutional commitment to bigging up the academic spaces of discourse around those things on our campus, then we can't exactly expect our students to magically care about these things. So reforming those departments, making both of them full majors would be a great step in the right direction, I think, dedicating the funding and the resources necessary to show that that's a major academic commitment of Santa Clara. And then also making those requirements in the core curriculum would be a way to get every single freshman who enters this door to have to interface with these issues in critical academic ways before their time is up here.
Hi everyone, my name is Alana. I'm a current junior, and I would just like to challenge everyone in this room. I know you guys are all leaders in some sort in your own different ways, but I just like to challenge you to get involved in different committees on campus that we have with ASG and put yourself in a position where you can talk to administration. Get yourself into student leadership positions where you automatically have those conversations with administrations, that your voices can be heard. So we don't have to continue to say, I don't feel like my voice is heard. Get yourself there so you can be heard. And I just want to challenge you all, especially the younger ones, the freshmen and sophomores, look into places where you can fit in and get your voice heard.
My name is Max. I was talking earlier about NCC. Anyways, I would also like to bring up a personal challenge to all of you. I think I've advocated within NCC for staff is look for your cross-cultural friendships. There's a saying that goes along something like, you're only as good as the top 5 people. And so if your top 5 people are these bigoted people or whatever, or like things that they say all these different things, or like you're not doing really involved in whatever, you're surrounding yourself in those views and you're getting closed off. And by having those cross-cultural friendships, looking outside, maybe one of your friends is from a marginalized community, you're that much more willing to empathize with them because they're your friend. So look for those friends and stay close.
Sorry, yeah. There's a lot that those ideas that I wanted to have a lot of other authorities that don't, but I really would like to see the administration gap be closed. In addition to that, I just wanted to be aware that I don't want this issue to die out because people get mentally tired, people get physically tired, people accept this as the norm, and
this is kind of more a suggestion, like, actually going back to what Tony was saying, I believe. I think there's a huge section of the population here who is almost like afraid to ask questions, afraid to say they don't know, and I personally would like to see a program where people can learn about maybe what even privilege means, something that, like, I don't think everyone is on the same page in the sense where they might not even know that they don't know. And I'd like to see like a more general program that people can go to that would tell them about what they don't even know they don't know. And then we can have like a broader discussion and hopefully include more people who might not necessarily be interested in that as ones that one feels more informed. I mean, that's like, honestly, there's been so many programs that are available, they just have been too afraid to capital, I think. Or they don't want to look stupid, which is really, anyway, I would just like to see a more general program that would teach people about things they might be afraid to ask about.
Hi, I'm Desiree Fletcher. Just based on my own recent experience with a sociology class that had an ELSJ requirement and required me to go volunteer at a school for 16 hours, I personally would like to see within either within the diversity requirement or even ethics, a similar type of program where there's a requirement for students in which they have to attend either a difficult dialogue event. I'm not just saying just one event, but they have to attend, and this is an instance where it would be mandatory, but I think it would be really meaningful because at all of the events I've attended in like this year and last year, every time I've heard people say the same thing, and it's that we're preaching to the choir, the same people who are interested are coming to these events. So I think that an opportunity to get people who may be privileged and don't know it, or to get people who may not want to hear these voices that are being marginalized and not heard to come to these events is to require it within their curriculum, because I know that's often left up to the discretion of teachers who may add it for extra credit, but I think that if we have a requirement, I'm saying maybe not a 16-hour requirement, but a requirement in which they say have to attend 5 different events throughout the quarter, and they have to be different events from different organizations within the MCC, Difficult Dialogue, SCAP, and get them involved in these wonderful organizations that are doing good work, and they're putting out good information, educating people, and are going unheard by the people who need to hear it most. So I hope that helps.
What's your comment on this side?
My name is Ty Van Herwig. I'm going to be that GDI in the room and bring up another big issue. The school is currently not associated with Greek life off campus. I know this has been the case since the early 2000s. And other schools, say at University of Oklahoma, when things happen, the school can act out and take accountability. And I think this is another big issue because we saw last year when a fraternity had a very misogynistic prop that was at their Halloween party. There wasn't really much accountability that was felt. So this is like Tabitha was saying, this is a predominant part of the party community. This is a lot of people who have the funds to be able to pay to be a part of these organizations. And so for that reason, I think the school needs to be directly associated with these off-campus student organizations. Because in the course that things like these happen, things like this can happen, the school can act and really make some sort of penalized system or something that holds these organizations accountable. And this isn't saying that the Greek organizations are inherently this way, but it holds more accountability. And as we see with universities like University of Oklahoma, these are institutions that were started in the 1850s by white racist men. And if these ideologies live out to today, there needs to be accountability for those ideologies, and there needs to be something done to educate us why these ideologies aren't okay.
Hi, I'm Libby. I'm a senior women and gender studies major and an ethnic studies minor. And I think I've heard a bit of frustration in the room about the accessibility of administration. And you can tell I'm a bit emotional. I really echo that as well. But I would say that like our programs are small. Like we have 11 majors and minors in one and 8 in the other. And like Tony said, those are companion majors. And I'm not here to preach about that, but I am here to say that if you're really interested, there are professors within those departments that are just as fired up as you are, and they're just as frustrated as you are, and they're just as willing to have those conversations, and they have office hours, and they have maybe a little bit more of a capacity than we do to affect staff and the rest of the administration. So I don't know what that looks like for you guys. I don't know what that looks like for the rest of organizations on campus, but those are resources that are really underutilized, at least from my perspective, and there are professors out there that are really willing to engage in some pretty fiery conversations about what we're talking about. So please think about utilizing that.
I know that more needs to go, so I'd like to hear if you statements would make some closing. That is why yeah, I appreciate it. So then, more of that kind of applause for being here. We address some of the concerns within the room. So I know Max, you want to speak?
Yeah, so the person who's on the other side of the room was talking about the privilege event. I guess if it wasn't made clear, Beyond Guilt started Action was a privilege campaign. And one of the 3 weeks, the first week was defining privilege, and we had events where we talked about what is privilege and how we engage with it. Second week was claiming privilege, taking all these different privileges that are heterosexual, white, cisgender, male, Christian, body, and taking a pledge that we would look past these privileges. And then for the final third week was to mobilize those privileges, redirect that energy of being upset, sad, frustrated, that, oh, hey, I'm X, and like you're trying to make me feel guilty if you're doing something I can't change about. Really change that into involvement, learning about perspectives, from organizations, really care about that. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is that we had this event and we tried to make it like huge as possible as we can, but we are also students and we can't do as much. It'd be great if we continue again for future years, but just to keep in mind is that one way we did try to, the goal of the program was to reach these new audiences that we never really engaged with before, and through that we partnered with professors, asked them to like advertise it. We had events during the day and during the night. We had tabling. We just thought of all these different creative ways that just have this really fully comprehensive campaign where you can just do anything. One-on-one talking, small group discussion, large group discussion, panel, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying our best here for those things.
Well, I didn't show my friend earlier, but I'm Deja Thomas, I'm a sophomore. But another thing, I think this is obviously a lot more so for administration, I guess, than it is for the student leaders. But I think one thing I didn't realize, I went to a high school that like had a similar like ethnic makeup as Santa Clara. Like minorities were like very, very like, underrepresented. But like Santa Clara specifically came to my school twice a year to talk to and outreach to students. And talking to other students from other, like even like local schools or even like schools from my same area, but like from my same state, I'm from Washington, but like ethnic makeup and like the whatnot, the school was a lot different. They didn't come to those schools like barely once a year, let alone like twice a year. So I think a big part of it is if you reach out to those students in those schools in high school who maybe they can't afford like $56,000 a year, but they're like passionate and dedicated. And I think by offering and reaching out to those students like beforehand, I think that'll make a big difference on the campus culture as well. Because if you primarily the students who go here, the schools they go to and whatnot, set it up so that they come in privileged period in some way, form, or another. But I think if you reach out and really develop the financial aid program instead of maybe like, I don't know necessarily if we need like a $12 million new building built like every other year, maybe that money can be funneled into scholarship and aid for students who are smart and intelligent, but simply can't even afford to maybe even only pay $30,000 a year if they do get a scholarship. So I think a big part of that will change campus culture when you have all kinds of people from like socioeconomic diverse backgrounds. I think that's what, in addition to all these other diversities, like this school is very like singular when it comes to socioeconomic.
Hi, I'm Avery Yik Yak. I'm a freshman. I'm also an orientation leader. And I think that Santa Clara has, or just a majority of the community kind of has a tendency to scapegoat the Greek community. Being in a sorority, I have learned a lot more than I have from Santa Clara. Like, my sorority gave me sex ed, and Santa Clara won't even give me a condom. Like, I didn't know what an IMD was. Like, I had no idea what any of it is. And I think that we often overlook the fact that Santa Clara's Greek life system isn't affiliated, so A, the university has some control over it, and B, like, there's more to Greek life than just partying. Like, philanthropy, I'm volunteering at like a shelter for women who have been battered by their husbands through domestic violence. Like, there is a lot more of the Greek community, and I think that this is a problem with the racism and everything. Like, this is a problem of Santa Clara as a whole and not the Greek community. So the ideology isn't coming from just random frat boys, sorority girls. It's coming from the university as a whole. So I think we need to stop focusing on like Greek life as much as the university.
Did you want to speak? And then I really have appreciated all the passion that's come out of this conversation. I think it's important that we recognize that force and work towards creating solutions together. As I look around the room, like people have left, but I mean that's a massive force, and I think that recognizing that and recognizing the voices that have spoken tonight, I just want to thank everybody that has taken that opportunity. So yeah, and then we'd like to move it forward.
Just to say, I know Lauren talked about collaboration with the LCC, but I think there really needs to be more interest between the groups. So if Igwe has something to do with police brutality, Igwe shouldn't be the only club that cares about that. If you're a minority, you should care about other minority concerns. It's already hard enough being a marginalized person on this campus. If we can come together and look at, our common struggles, then I don't know if the FCC is going to do this.
Going on, that's just like 2 years cycle by this time. Like, it is completely fine if you guys will leave, but also like, I personally and probably the rest of everyone here will stay here after if you guys want to stay and have anything else to watch.
We also go to the school. Like, we are always here for you guys to talk to us if you want to make the changes that you're so passionate about. So come find us anytime, any day. Yeah, it's not everybody.
Yeah, we're not yelling here just saying like, if you
Will there be more conversations about this moving forward? Is there another one scheduled?
we can schedule.
Schedule one.
Yeah. That was the open.
May I also add before everyone leaves that although Father E was not here, there are several administrators who are here who report to him directly. This message will get to him. We have a tape to show him. He's going to hear your voice. So please know that he is going to hear you. He's going to hear you.
Just about the fraternity and sorority thing, like, yeah, I do know so many people in frats and sorority that do so many great things, but one thing that I've learned is that the bigger the organization, the better, so the more, like, change they can kind of do. So one of the things that I've kind of been thinking about is that, I think it's kind of a problem that the school doesn't recognize them. Kind of what Ty was going off of, like, that's great. I think that they should be tied with the school, because then, yeah, the school gets to, keep them accountable, and, we have these Jesuit values and things like that, and so if the fraternities and sororities are tied in with that, they can hold each other accountable, hold that at a greater scale. The administration will be tied into that as well, and then not just like creating change here on campus, but even like beyond that. Like the frats and sororities here, their organizations are so huge, and they can reach out to so many different people. Like, it's so powerful. I would like to see that put to more use.
Yeah, and I want to agree with Linda. I think that's it's really, really important that that we have these conversations. I think a lot of people, especially people in social justice, like to scapegoat the Greek organizations, and I don't feel like it's fair because I don't think the Greek organizations are any more prejudiced than the rest of our campus. But they actually engage with a lot of people very constantly in ways that don't necessarily intersect with social justice all the time. And so I think because of that, they can be a really, really strong partner in these things. I think the Greek organizations, if you can partner with them and come together with them in order to have discussions and trainings and education about these things, everything is much more powerful. I think we have a huge cultural divide between the Greek organizations or Greek students and other students, and I think that's a huge problem. And I think that if we can manage to come together, we're a lot more powerful that way. And I think that we're going to have to be the ones as students to start that, because the administration has already shown that they're going to be real obstinate about excluding the Greek organizations as organizations from any on-campus discourse. I mean, I've had dialogues on campus where people from administration told me that if Greek organizations were invited formally to the discussion, they would not be allowed to serve in the discussion. And I think that's a huge problem. So I think that's a change we need to address as students.
Speaking to that, I have reached out numerous times sororities to invite them to attend our events, and I have not received any response in that regard from any of them. But I also think from friends that I have who are in fraternities and sororities, they've spoken to me with the regulations that they have not being associated with the school about their ability to come and represent their fraternity or sorority at on-campus events. And so I think that that does go both ways, and so thank you for bringing that up.
Of course.
Yeah, so just to close that out, like I said, again, let's continue this conversation. I think it's important that we don't just wait for media. I mean, we can definitely plan something to make this happen again. But just tap into these individuals around you that are just extremely passionate and incredible leaders. So moving forward, I'd like to open up the conversation to any concerns for our incoming leaders, and then also just outgoing CSO leaders kind of head that direction. Okay, so, yeah, go ahead.
Don't be afraid to get in trouble. Be angry, be aware, don't be afraid to get in trouble, because you guys are the people who have the most leverage of any students on campus in terms of your visibility and in terms of the way that you interface with administration. And so, you know, don't be afraid.